Hello, friends. My name is Steve, and I'm here today with Adrian Selby and Bookaholic Brown Nymph. We are going to be deep diving into The Winter Road, so it's going to be full spoilers. So if you have not read the book, uh, do not watch the
Yeah.
stream. Watch it later.
Yeah.
Do not spoil this experience for yourself because it is quite the journey. So, Adrian, you want to kick us off with an introduction and tell us about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I'm Adrian Selby. I've been a guest on Steve Talks Books before. It was much more a wider discussion about my work. But we're talking about The Winter Road. So The Winter Road is my second novel. There are three in all. The first was Snakewood, which published in 2016. Winter Road 2018, and then Brother Red in 2021, I think. Yeah. Um, they're three standalone novels, all set in the same world. Um, there are links between them, kind of sort of very small links, but they're about 100 odd years apart each. So yeah, there's you could jump into any of them, and certainly if you jump into the Winter Road, you could kind of find out the future in Snakewood and the future in Brother Red is all a bit hodgepodge. So Snakewood, the first novel, is probably the one that chronologically is at the end. I just happened to write that one first, and then with the other two, when Orbit, the publisher, came back and said they wanted a couple more novels, I found myself digging into the past that I had, um, I guess, created in order to tell the story of Snakewood and put that world together. There were elements in that world that I was really wanted to go deeper into and tell the story of, and so I ended up as a result going into the past for the Winter Road and Brother Red.
Hmm. And Bookaholic, you want to introduce yourself and tell us about your channel?
Sure. My name is Angela. You can call me Angie. So I have a very small, teeny tiny booktube channel that I started last year. So I mostly speak about fantasy and a little bit of literary fiction. I'm starting to read a lot of classics these days, and also tipping my toe into graphic novels. So all over the place. So and I just finished Winter Road today morning, so it's fresh in my mind. So very excited to talk to Adrian about this. Yeah.
Awesome. And thanks, Adrian, for doing this with us because we like to geek out about this sort of thing. So thanks for being willing to come by and tell us all the stuff that happened behind the scenes in your decisions for certain things. It's going to be a lot of fun. So
Mm.
lots to discuss.
Yeah, definitely.
I think we were talking a little bit before we went live about how this book, because I had mentioned in my review that it stuck with me for a long time, and you had mentioned that it stuck with you after you wrote it. So what stuck with you about this one after you wrote the book and finished it?
Um, that's a great question. It's because there's a sense in which they've all stuck with me, but I think, and I reread it for this podcast. I thought I can't get caught out with a question, and forget sort of bits of my own plot. So I'm seeing some people joining the stream. Hello to all of you. Um, it Where do I start? Um, I Rereading it, I realized just how much I put her through as a person. I mean, she suffers hugely.
Oh.
She obviously the centerpiece, if you like, the central tragedy of the novel is the murder of her adopted son.
Mm.
And the novel, as you know, goes back and forth. It starts, if you like, after that event when she is completely broken, and then it flashes backwards to all the happy days, and then it flashes forward to post tragedy, but therefore something terrible is coming. Um,
Mm.
and unlike the other novels where I kind of knew what was coming, but they were much more straightforward, I suppose, in their own ways. I just felt terrible all the way through, knowing what I was going to do to it, because I write chronologically as well. Sorry, I write from page one to page 400,
Mm.
500. So it wasn't until the middle of the book that I wrote that scene, that awful scene where she witnesses her son being killed. Um, and so all the way through, as I'm writing it, I'm thinking, oh, what am I doing? What am I doing? Um, and so for me, that through the year or two I was writing it, I I was kind of with her. She really. I thought about it a lot, and I guess all authors do when they're writing their characters. But I thought about what she was going to go through, and it was almost informing how I was constructing the thing, how her response to the things that happened to her along the way. But I also knew that kind of later on, I had an idea about where I wasn't quite sure until after writing that scene quite how it would work out with her and Auda. So Taya, her husband is Auda, the adopted son Mosa,
Mm.
and I knew it couldn't be a happy ending, but equally I thought it would be too bad for it to be a dreadful ending. I thought I just can't put her through the ringer and then finish her off in some dreadful tragic way. I thought there needs to be some form of survival, how you get through it, how you just live, how do you keep living when that's happened, and how do you find joy in life, and how can you carry on, and all those things were going through my mind. And so while for Gant and Shale in Snakewood, and then Druna, Magoster in Brother Red, terrible things happen, and lots of fighting and daring do and all the rest of it. I think Taya's journey was the one where the loss was so intense, and possibly that's because I'm a parent, and so you think, what would it be for me to lose a child, and you draw on that well of just the how desperately awful it would be, which and you compare that to maybe the suffering of Druna and Gant and Shale, and they're much more, if you like, mercenary soldier sufferings. They're the sufferings of people who are going into combat, who live that life, and they lose their friends, and they have great friendships and loves, but what she lost and what she gave up, just seemed to really hit home for me, kind of deeply. And then hers is also the only story through the letters where I let myself explore the whole of her life and how did that life play out. And I think, with the other characters, you meet them, and a number of weeks, months, possibly years, it depends on the novel, but there's a slice of time that you get their lives, and then maybe they stare off into the sunset, but you never really see what happens. But to me, it was material to the novel to understand how the rest of her life went. And so, unlike the other two novels, I lived, from that point of retirement or that ambition that she had right through to her dying breath. I spent with her, and that's longer in that kind of weird way than I've spent with any of my other characters in terms of how they change and grow. And so that's why it really stuck with me, long after I'd finished the book.
And Angie, did you have any questions or any topics you wanted to bring up?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the first thing when I started reading first one or two chapters into the book, the first thing that struck me is the language, because it took some time to get used to. So I just wanted to ask Adrian, so the colloquialism and the specific kind of weird grammar that's being used. So did you intentionally put that in, or when you started writing, you thought that you need to put something like this in? Because when you read, it's 5 years from now, if somebody quotes this without any giving you any context, this is from this world because of the specific structure of the sentences. So how did you come about that?
Yeah, so it was a really conscious decision. I'm very conscious about the voice, the narrative voice, and particularly, of course, like with the other two books, they're first person, and so you're very much thinking, how educated is this person? How would they speak? And I think I've mentioned this on the podcast I did with Steve a few weeks back, and I think I've mentioned it elsewhere. But I was very, very influenced by a book by Peter Carey called True History: The Kelly Gang. So if you said you were doing literary fiction, so I thoroughly recommend that
Okay.
for you to read, especially because I think once you begin to read it, you go, yeah, he's stolen this. This is where he got it all from. Because
Yes.
because he wrote first person in the voice of Ned Kelly, a famous Australian outlaw from the I
Mm,
think the 19th century. Um, and so Ned Kelly, being semi-illiterate or certainly not at all educated, his writing has really bad grammar, and there are missing full stops and capital letters. So it's written as though Ned Kelly, was writing it. Um,
mm,
and it also meant, of course, that Peter Carey as an author was limited by Ned Kelly's vocabulary and what he could say and how he chose to say it. So I'm no doubt there were Australian colloquialisms in there as well from that era. I'm sure Peter Carey did all the homework. Um,
mm,
and it was really moving. There was a point at which I think the only conceit in the novel that might be fictional, because I think it was not established, was whether Ned Kelly had a daughter. So I think,
mm,
or a strange daughter. So I think Peter Carey worked that in, and there was a moment where Ned Kelly's trying to describe his love for his daughter, and it's just poorly written because he can't articulate himself very well, and
mm,
but that bluntness to his expression of love, I think actually was very well crafted, because
mm,
he restricted himself, but nonetheless, I think created some quite beautiful lines. But I was immediately struck by the power of, like, the emotion I felt reading it. I really felt for Ned Kelly at that moment, and I was taken aback because I thought I'm actually feeling for Ned Kelly, um,
mm.
because it felt like Ned Kelly himself was speaking to me, because of the
Yeah.
vocabulary. It didn't feel like a third person narrator putting Ned Kelly in quotes. It was Ned Kelly's own voice, if you like. And I thought, oh, I've got to write in first person, because
Mm,
it will allow me to immerse my readers in the world itself, because you're seeing it through their eyes. I thought that would be a great way to bring someone into my world. And I'm equally conscious that, I've got a Welsh accent, but actually it's a quite specifically a Barry accent, which is a small town in South Wales. And you go 20 minutes on the train to Cardiff to the east, and the accent's slightly different, and then you go
mm,
20 minutes north on the train and the accent's different. I thought it can't be much of a distinctive world if your character doesn't carry some kind of
mm,
colloquialism, or their way of speaking needs to be different to another person's way of speaking. And this was explored, and I used this very explicitly in Snakewood, which is a
mm,
kind of a found footage. So there's lots of different narrative voices, and I've tried to write them all differently. Their word choices, the way they speak, what they say, how they describe things. They're meant to be very, very distinct voices. So coming into Winter Road, um, it it's thinking about her particular voice, and then trying to remember to do it all the way through the novel. I think the one clear one that'll stick out to a lot of readers is, she'll say "I was,"
mm,
it was this, I was this, rather than were or weren't. Um, and so that was one, if you like, one way to just tweak a sentence, leave it be quite legible, but nevertheless make it feel a little bit different. There are probably others in there. I know I made a couple of those, whether I can find them now, but I was looking for phrases they would use. Like there was a phrase when I was reading back through, that person's not worth a leather on a lash. And
mm,
and there you're trying to think of, well, what aphorisms that we've got, that's the pot calling the kettle black, and those kinds of sayings that people have. You think, well, I can't use that one because people will think, well, I use that word, that can't be in a fantasy
mm,
book. So when they're trying to describe, like, he's as stupid as a dog on the droop, when you're trying to think of ways to that they would say this person's, a bit crazy, or this
mm,
person's, worthless, or not a very good person. You're trying to find something that's in world, but also
mhm,
feels like a natural saying, because of course it's really hard to create aphorisms, because they're so good at what they do, and so you're trying to create your own, but make them context dependent. But to me, all that effort was really important to just immerse you and get you into the sense of the place. I think there are other things. I would have marked them actually. If I'd thought I might get this question, I should have maybe done a bit more homework. But reading back through, I rediscovered, if you like, that the way she speaks is different to the way
Mm,
Truna speaks in Brother Red. That they
mm,
and then you've got all the world building that goes with that. The theats and and standing stones and all these other things, these elements that are to do with their sort of folklore and whatever. But yeah, I took a lot of time over the voice, particularly, and also,
mm,
and it may not be noticeable, but in the letters, as you go through the letters, after the first few letters, she starts to use were instead of was, because I decided that at some point when she had stopped fighting and become the administrator and the person trying to create the post from scratch, she would have developed better her vocabulary in order to negotiate all the contracts and speak to all
Mhm.
the traders and merchants and things. So I changed it
mm.
very subtly through the
Wow.
letters
Okay.
as she got older. I wasn't sure anyone would pick up on it, but that never matters. That doesn't matter. That mattered to me that
Mm-hmm.
I take that care over the sentences to really give you that, like you say, when you read it, you just feel this person's got, they are distinctive. They've got a distinctive voice. And yeah, and it does extend to the colloquialisms, the word choices you can and can't make. So
Mm,
often when she would say something or try to describe something, there would be words that I would like to use, but a bit like Peter Carey, it's like, well, I can't use that. That doesn't sound like her. So I need to find a different way of putting that feels much more in keeping with her, in the way she speaks and talks and thinks.
Hmm.
mm.
Yeah, definitely did notice that as a letter. I didn't notice it subtly, but I did notice in the letters that it did change over time. So that was a nice touch. And
Cool.
that's kind of what I thought too, is that she's having to she has a different role now, so her vocabulary would change.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Just another question, that is there an audiobook already out? Because that would be interesting.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, I can't remember the narrator's name. And
Mhm,
it was an interesting one because I think when they sent me a sample, because you don't get to
mhm,
choose your narrator, they said here's
mm,
the narrator that we're employing, and she's got a very, what I would call a posh accent. I couldn't even do one. Oh, hello, like very kind of well-spoken English accent. And I thought I might have got someone maybe with a more regional accent, maybe whether it's
mm,
Yorkshire, Scottish, or Irish, something that that almost lent itself to a character that's not well educated in this, that, and the other. But and so I thought that was a bit strange. But apparently, for there's a few people, not many people actually, have read have listened to the audiobook or bought it, sadly. But for the few that I've spoken to that have, they really enjoyed that narration
mm,
because what they're looking for is a much straighter narration, not necessarily a particularly theatrical narration or a narration that
mm,
leans into the voices so much. I think the narrator for Snakewood possibly had license to do it because there were so many different voices, and I think he did try to put more into each voice. Um, Zara Ram, thank you, Lorne. He tried to put more of that into it. But definitely, um, I never realised, because I don't do audiobooks, I never realised that actually it's a very personal. Just some people get really put off by the theatrical,
Mm.
but
mm,
some people want that. That the people that have quite different and distinct tastes when it comes to how their book is narrated to them. And so, what I didn't think was necessarily the right choice for the voice that I heard in my head might actually very well be the perfect choice for how people want to actually consume the audiobook.
Hmm.
mhm.
Interesting. And the story starts off with a bang. I think it doesn't waste any time getting into it.
Yeah.
Instead of, why did you decide to start it out just jumping into the action right away?
I think that's a thing which I was kind of guided to, advised to do. I always thought it would be a good thing to get people going, like as in, you don't want to start with a bunch of lengthy description or exposition or history or scene setting, because people aren't invested yet. They don't care yet about the context.
Hmm.
They just want to know who do I need to, who am I caring about? Who's the person? Who is Taya Amundsen? Why will I care about them? Who are they? I want my first look at them as soon as possible, because I need you to get behind them as soon as possible. But obviously at the same time, I put her in this situation where it was almost an unwinnable. Well, in fact, it wasn't winnable, because she actually technically died. She got killed, and then sort of brought back to life, by the Oscuro. So I wanted it to be a real, like you say, like she entering an icy river, a really kind of freaky. One of the great things, incidentally, about that approach is that there were two people that told me they got to near the end of chapter 1, or that opening scene, and didn't realize until near the end it was a woman. And they had just
Yeah.
assumed it was a man that was undergoing, that was getting, I think it might have been the point at which the herders looked like they were going to sort of rape her or torture her or whatever, that they realized, oh, this is a woman, because just the desperate teeth knocked out, I think she looks at the boots she's wearing and recalls the person that she had strangled to death to steal them off, up in the mountains, that she's literally just this ragged, kind of wild thing, and just surviving as best she can, because I can't remember thinking about it, how long after her son being killed and her escaping that the book starts. It might be a week or two, or a month, maybe, I'm not sure, but she was up in the mountains in the winter, so she was just literally on the edge of life and death at that point anyway. Then she runs into some herders, and she got nothing to lose. She's like, I'm ready to die, let's go, so it's finding a stick or a club, and it's not classy, I think she's slow, she gets stabbed, she gets speared, all this stuff is just like, it all just goes completely wrong, and then she falls down in the dirt, and then it goes back in time, I think, and then she wakes up. I can't quite remember. So yeah, it was just, oh God, look at this terrible stuff's happening to this person. And it looks like they've died. I need to know what's happened next. So you're just trying to set up that this person's on the edge. They're vulnerable. They seem to have lost everything. I'm intrigued. I want to know more. So to me, that was important to do all that and worry about the context after. I think you then switch to the I think they're at Off-Butters, where she's with Auda and Thad, I think, and she's saying, this is the expedition I'm going to go on. So you go back in time and go, oh right, now this is her life, her context before this must have happened. And so that's when I introduce you to that. So you're already hopefully then thinking, how did we get from here to there? It's the classic, in a detective thriller or something, they show you this, and then 6 months earlier, and you think, well, I know it's going to end in a terrible way. So I'm invested. I want to know quite how it goes from here to there,
And hello,
Hello,
Jenny.
Chad. I'm just seeing people popping in on the side here.
Yeah. And I'd heard about how well you wrote action before I got into The Winter Road, but it is very visceral and disorienting.
Yeah.
I wonder how you go about writing your action scenes.
So apparently, if you talk to Ed McDonald really badly in Snakewood, as in I for all that I thought I'd done plenty of research for Snakewood about all the world and the world building, medieval economies, and all that kind of stuff. What I didn't clearly do enough research on was sword fighting and spear fighting and all the rest of it. And it was only when I got to know people like Ed who had literally done tons of research on that and actually do medieval sword fighting and practice that kind of stuff, that I went then to YouTube and various other sources and bought some books on it and realized that actual fighting takes seconds. And there was I remember there was an old sort of samurai film years and years and years ago that I remember being intensely disappointed by as a teenager, because it set up these two, whether it was a Ronin and a samurai or whatever, it set up these two samurai who you knew they were going to have a one-on-one fight at the end. And so you're watching the whole film and it's building up, right, oh, here we go, these two impossibly capable sword fighters are going to have this epic battle. And then I think the one just runs the other through. Like it's almost one engagement through, and then he just drops dead.
Done. Yeah.
Oh, I, of course, that's actually how things happen.
Mhm.
It's fractions of a second. It's the balance. And so when it came to the Winter Road, and I'd done a bit more homework, and I understood better about how spears bind and how swords bind and stuff like that, and how you're trying to roll a spear or roll a shield or whatever. You're trying to manipulate someone, their balance. Or you're trying to gain a footing or find that opening. That those things happen in the blink of an eye, because as soon as the sword or the spear goes in, you're kind of done. You're from there. If you're not instantly taken out, then you haven't really got very long, and the person is instantly upper hand. And so that, I think, meant that the fight scene sped up tremendously in the Winter Road. I did indulge myself. I did still enjoy writing the big epic. There's a big epic sword fight scene, nevertheless, in the end of Snakewood, which I'm still super proud of. Um, but in terms of the construction of them, uh, I just do that thing where I'm thinking about, well, if this is happening, this is happening, then they're going to go there, or if they're off balance, I'm kind of playing it out a little bit and just working out, can they recover?
Hmm.
You then have to dial in the fight brews, because the fight brews mean that your agility, your balance, the speed of thought and stuff is very different to what we're capable of. So your capabilities are different, in the same way that you or I could go, onto a pommel horse or something, and then there's who's that gymnast, the American gymnast, the absolutely insane. What's her name? And
I
she's won
forget.
all the gold medals.
Yeah, I forget her
Um,
name.
and,
Simone something. Yeah.
yeah, but when you
But
watch when you watch her flip and tumble and just run and move and fly, and somersault and stuff, it's like a different species you're watching. That there's, but you think, hold on, this is the same body, but wow, the capability is incredible. So I think, well, if I'm doing a fight scene, I need to amp that up even more, because now we're going to feed her with tremendously
Mm.
terrible body changing drugs and send it into a fight scene, and so, but the other thing you're wrestling with, of course, is a few fights. So for example, I think there's an ambush. I think she's with Salia, and they ambush her old outpost as they go back through the circle, and they're on fight brews, and the people defending are on fight brews. They might be on what I call a Daya, which is just a kind of a milder kind of amphetamine type thing. Um, and so it's actually over really, really quickly, because they're simply far too fast. There's no contest, and so it's rare in my world that you get an even contest unless you're both expecting to fight, because you wouldn't take a fight brew otherwise, because of how much it damages you. And so in that scene, I think they leap the walls, the arrow flies off the bow, and they they see it in, um, there's like a hyper realness to it. I tried to get across as well. I thought I wanted to really lean into the fact that the experience they were having was almost synesthetic. But it was certainly like being on, not mushrooms as such in terms of the wackiness, but that you're in a different plane of perception, and what you see and what you focus on. I think there's a moment when they're drawing bows ready to trigger the ambush, and she looks over, I think, at Salia, and Salia's bowstring is on her lips, and she just gets infatuated by Salia's lips, because she's always kind of fancied this Salia. She just sort of completely ethereally distracted at this moment that they're meant to be ambushed, because the brain is kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
But it's these strange little details that you pick out when you're tripping. Dare I say it?
Yes,
Apparently, that you fixate upon.
apparently. Yes.
And 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 so, like, I think there's a description when the arrow leaps off the bow, and it leaps like a wolf off the bow, and it bends. When you see the arrows in videos and stuff, in slow motion, the way they sort of bend
Mm.
and warp, and she sees all that, and the idea that they can see, they just, I think there's, this might be Brother Red as well, but there's moments where, yeah, that's it. She's in the woods just before she meets the children near the start. That feat they come across where they're being attacked by the white boys, and one of them, when she starts to kill them from a distance across the river, one of them turns and shoots, and she just knows the arrow's not going to hit her. She can see it in flight, and it's that
Mm.
kind of bullet time matrixy
mhm.
thing,
Mm.
that it's all happening really quick, but it allows me to focus on these nice cinematic, spectacular elements. And
Mm.
then the fight ends really quickly. So it's almost as though my fight brews, if you like, have given me the luxury to use a certain amount of words, but focus on very cool cinematic things rather than the
Mm,
mechanics of duck, weave,
mm,
dodge, thrust, miss, and that kind of
mm,
almost list of body moves. You want to, and that was advice that I'd taken as well. What's important about writing a fight scene, and this I've got given this as great advice, and I think it's fairly well-known advice. If you're writing a fight scene, write about how the people in the fight feel rather than the actions they're performing. How does it feel? I think there's a moment where that Theet is then attacked just before she rescues the kids onto the barge and goes down river, and I think she's stabbed someone up through the mouth, and
mm,
but they're still strangling her, and she can feel the life draining out of her while she's got this dagger through this. You're thinking, how come you're not dead? I'm dying here, and I've already killed you. And I that's what I focused on is that feeling of, I can't believe I'm about to die because this person's so drugged up on their fight brew they can't even feel the fact that there's a knife up through their face. And it was that, it just gives you that flexibility, focus on those things and how that person's feeling, because the feeling of being strangled is something which everyone you know would instantly sort of feel something for, but the the actions that you might take are quite alien to anyone that doesn't sword fight for a living. So it's almost common sense to steer away from that if you can, because most people aren't going to visualize it too well anyway.
mm. I think for the action scenes alone, this book deserves some kind of adaptation. Steve, you mentioned it in your review, I think, a few days ago that it should be adapted into at least a mini series or something, because I think that the action sequence for the for the reasons that Adrian just now explained, it would look spectacular, I think. Right.
I always had an eye on
And
that. I completely agree with you. I completely agree. A Netflix 10-episode adaptation would be fantastic. But always in my mind when I had the idea of the fight brews and everything was, surely this would translate well, because it changes the color of their veins. They've got the skin
mm,
rubs. They pay the color to look at. They grow. They almost look like superheroes. They grow into these kind of they wear leathers that are loose so they can fill out into them. But then, like I say, the color of their skin is all really sort of bonkers. Their eyes go funny colors, and and what they see and experience and perceive is hyper real. Like, it's all bullet time with added psychedelics and stuff. And I
mm.
just thought, yeah, this would, you could go to town if you were a VFX studio. If you're wet at digital, you could have a lot of fun with this. So yeah. So if Peter Jackson's listening, I'm sure he is. Um,
Yeah. Will we get a book of solely dedicated to Oscoros? Because I am very intrigued by them, and I think I would read that book if it comes out.
So if you haven't read the Brother Red, if you haven't read
No, I
Brother
haven't.
Red
Mm.
is all about the Oscaro and their cousins,
Okay.
the Associ. I
Mm-hmm.
daren't spoil that. We've only got Winter Road spoilers up here.
Mm.
But yeah, they play a hugely important role in that. They're central to that book. And yeah, in fact, it's not too much of a spoiler to say that with the main character has a bit of a love interest with one of them. So yeah, they're front and center in that book in terms of the action and the events, and partly for the reasons you outlined. They're hinted at in Snakewood, particularly around Casgal's Landing, and Teir Amundsen, and I think Thad. I think there's a point on their mercenary travels there in Casgal's Landing where they come across the Associ, but the Oscara were obviously in the circle, and they're aware of them, and they're feared and reviled and stuff. But the moment you create something like the Oscaro and the capability they would have with plant to make fight brews, such that they're innately going to be far superior to anything that humans could develop, because they kind of almost got plant running through their veins. What I call in Brother Red the Master of Flowers, the leader of the Oscaro, has a flower of fates in that their skull has been cut away, and they have a flower of fates put in their brain. And the flower of fates is significant in snakewood. It's obviously significant in this because there's 2 seeds that she carries in this one. She's got a seed which she's hoping to take to the circle principally, and she's keeping one back because you don't want to lose them both because they're so precious. But the seed gets implanted in the baby Oscaro that's going to be the chief. And so but these seeds, these plants are they're so powerful. They're the most powerful kind of fight brew. And if you take the seed, you become insanely powerful for a short time and then die because your body overloads. It can't repair the change that the seed puts in you. And of course, the fact that there are Oscaro with these just in their veins means they're insanely powerful. But the moment something becomes that powerful, it becomes very valuable and becomes very important to the powers and the politics and the economy of the world. And so in that respect, you almost couldn't escape it once you create them and you realize and you have your context of the world. They have to become important to it, either hunted and hated or otherwise very influential. And yeah, they end up being hugely influential. I'll come to that question in a minute, Lauren. The questions are flashing up on my interface really big. I'm like, they. Oh, see, I've lost my thread now. It was okay. Yeah, they become. Yeah, they just become massively. You can't ignore. Yeah, that's right. So at the end of the Winter Road, when Lorne sets off to find Auda after the final scene with the buffalo and everything, the Oscaro have basically given her a fight brew, and it's that fight brew, which is one of their fight brews, that helps her because she synthesizes it. It helps her, the post effectively, her good company, as she calls it in that context, because it's sort of slightly before the post. It becomes the post. It gives them the edge. And so you could almost say that 1 or 2 fight brews that the Oscaro gave her were one of the principal reasons why the post became so powerful, was because it simply had the best brews, so they could then succeed in their trade missions and when they're supporting their caravans or whatever they tried to achieve, breaking through frontiers or setting up new roads, whatever it was. She simply had better fight brews than everyone else, and it gave her a massive edge financially, economically, and in terms of the armies that she went on to build. So the consequences are massive if you hold true to what the magic is in that world. Just a quick look at Lauren's question. Speaking of Brother Red's relationship,
Yeah,
I've heard you mention you made this spur of the moment. Did you make any spur of the moment plot decisions like that while writing the Winter Road? Yeah, yes, Lauren. Thank you. The most significant one, and I won't talk about that particular relationship for Brother Red, obviously. The one in the Winter Road that really got me was the 5. I think it was 5 children. The children that she rescued from the burning Theet when it was attacked by the White Boys, and they get onto the river, onto the barge, and escape, and it's just her and a bunch of kids. It was only as I was writing that fight scene that I thought, she obviously has to get out of this, but how do I make it really hard for her? How do I raise the stakes on this? But I thought I'd introduced the kids, I think, or there were a couple of kids around, and I thought, she saves the kids. She can't save the Theet, but she'll save the children. She would not save the children. She's not a bad person. She's not just going to say, you can all burn, I'm off, and so because initially when you come into, and I thought there was a nice symmetry to that, because when she comes past the Theet, she's looking to ignore it. She just wants to find somewhere to hide and die. She's done. She's finished. She hates the Oscaro for bringing her back to life. But then she sees them getting attacked by the White Boys, and she thinks, I can't leave these farmers and peasants to just be butchered. I just can't do it, And she's with the way it's written, she just doesn't want to. I don't want to do this. I don't want to get involved, but I just can't not get involved. So equally, then when it comes to the end, will you save our children? Will you save the what's left of the Kelson? I think it's the Kelson Theet. Will you save what's left of the Kelsons? This family, this name, and it's just. She's like, I kind of can't not, and of course she's thinking back to Moser, and what that had cost, ambition had cost her there, and so she's bound. And so I thought, actually, that would be really cool if I if she has to load a bunch of kids onto a barge. But now what do I do? So to Lord's point, I kind of thought that would be a great thing because it has resonance with Moser. It's her doing something good, despite, in a way, indirectly having brought death to the Theet, because the problem and the argument she got into during that in that Theet were, um, because you killed a few of the white boys, they'll be back to burn the place down. Why did you get involved? And she's thinking, well, if I didn't, you'd all be, well, God knows what would have happened to you. You'd be tortured, whatever, or made slaves, whatever it is. It wouldn't have been pleasant. But some of them were arguing, well, now you've just killed us all, and she kind of did, because they came back in numbers. They did a good job fighting them, but it was they were dead the moment that it happened, and she kind of knew it as well. So when it came to being able to get out of there with the kids, she almost couldn't let them down. She couldn't look I think it was the woman who was running the theatre or whatever. She couldn't look her in the eye, and I think there was an older woman as well who kind of put her arm around her and welcomed her for her fighting spirit and protecting their name and integrity and stuff. But ultimately, she had that bond, and so then the other thing with it as well was, as soon as I wrote those kids' names down, when they sat in the barge and she's trying to row away, she's trying to take their mind off not looking at their parents and families being slaughtered and burned to death. She asks their names and who they are. I think there's a woman with a baby there as well. And the moment I wrote each of their names and put a little line in, this one's a bit cheeky, this one's a bit gobby, this one's quiet and sullen, they instantly came to life in my head. These kids, I love these kids. I love these kids. The Dotka, Letty, Dotka, but I just Dotka and Letty particularly. I think I've got that right. I just thought these kids are just awesome. I love them. I need these kids to. Well, initially I thought I need these kids to live, and then I thought actually what would be interesting, given I knew the book would end up going through the whole life of Taya Amundsen, was what would happen to 5 orphans in a world like this, given she's going to have to leave them very shortly in the hands of an almshouse or someone else, and of course there's that short sequence with them where she's begging for food, scraps of food. I think she knocks a farmer out or whatever and takes a jar of this lingonberry jam or whatever. She's just trying to find food, and feeding them off her fingers or whatever. I think there's the one scene where the woman basically leaves the kid with her, or sells the kid, or goes, we want you for this guy's a paramour for this merchant, but we don't want the kid. So she just dumps the kid, and all this, and because those are the kinds of brutal decisions, I'm sure, when people had to make, when it came to survival with absolutely nothing and no food and starving, you can be driven to those things. And so, I then wanted to know myself what happens to these kids afterwards. I need to work out how it goes, and it can't go brilliantly well, but it can all be tragic either. What do they make of themselves as a result of coming into contact with Taya Amundsen? And so when that scene passed and I was moving on to type in the rest, that was a real pleasure, knowing I'm coming back to think about your lives and how your lives go as a result of meeting Taya. And of course, in the letters, it explains, how all their lives do go and how they get on, and some fall by the wayside and some don't. And even that it's kind of upsetting to me, or quite moving to me, because it's like, well, I brought these people into being all of a sudden, and now I'm responsible for their whole lives and how they're going to play out. And you feel a bit weird as an author, like I've created you, and now I'm gonna, which is like, I suppose, with any character, but for these kids, it's almost like they didn't ask for it. Taya Amundsen asked for it because she was my protagonist, whether she likes it or not. These kids came out of nowhere, and now I've got to take care of them, and work out how life's going to treat them. And so that was one of the unexpected pleasures.
Angie, did you have a question?
Just one about, so obviously everybody's talking about how the strong female character that you've built, especially, not your typical quintessential female character, right? She's very different. But my question is also, when it comes to her partner, forgive me if I'm pronouncing the name wrong, Aude, like
Yeah.
her keep. So he is also, he's very different, right, from the, again, quintessential male characters or husbands or that we see. He's not dominating, or he doesn't demand things from him. She's out there in the world being a mercenary, doing her stuff, and he's not stopping. He's um actually encouraging her to go out in the world and chase her dream or whatever it is. And also, that shows how secure he is in his masculinity as well. He's not feeling challenged because his wife is out there in the world, doing her stuff. And so I felt that very refreshing. And I hope that was a conscious choice also from your side, or was it just in the flow that it was characterized? Yeah.
Yeah, he was just, like I say, he's just the kind of guy that would admire a woman or anyone for what they achieved, and so where a lot of people saw an old mercenary, paid the color, physically very imposing, maybe not sort of super tall and giant like Thor or something, but in that world, if you've paid the color, you're an extremely frightening individual. Like it's the proof that you can fight. You're a brutal fighter. You're a killer. You're capable of anything. And very difficult to kill because the residual effects of fight brews, for all that they break you down, do make you very resistant to cuts and wounds and this, that, and the other. But equally, yeah, leave you with a lot of natural residual strength. So she would be quite fearsome, to many men, but to him, especially, the couple of times he got to know her, she'd become a merchant. I think he just kind of found her attractive. But equally, of course, he'd had some tragedy because Moses' mother died in childbirth, I think, and so he was just kind of keeping himself to himself. And so he's just an ordinary guy. He's not, like I say, he's not a fighter. You if you haven't paid the color, you can't rock up to someone and push him around who's paid the color. It's just silly. Like it almost tells you
Mm.
who's really strong and hard, and you just shouldn't go near. But she was just trying to make something of herself. He admired her for the way she was going about her life, I think, and the way
Yeah.
she was just working and things, and just thought, you're just cool. And then so I think there was an initial attraction. She found him very attractive to look at or whatever, and hadn't really expected that. And he equally just said, I think you're fine to look on. And of course, she responded really positively because she,
Mhm.
and that was one of the colloquialisms, fine to look on rather than fine to look at. But incidentally,
Yeah.
back to that earlier point, you're fine to look on. I like to look on you so she, so then they go out for a ride, and he knows he can't compete when she's ferreting up a tree to get at some plant or whatever. Like, he knows she's just loads stronger. He's just cool with it. But then, of
Mm.
course, as he gets to know her, and what her ambition is, and I think he does tell her at some point early on the journey across the circle. I think there's a scene in a stable or something, and he just says, I can't quite, all the plans you've been making, you've been away all this time, and it's really happening. And it's just the pride he has in someone making a massive difference. But interestingly, like that's echoed in Tarrickson, the old merchant.
Mhm.
They're at the old house up on the hill, and just
Yeah.
before they leave, and Tarrickson comes up, and I think he gives Moser a little treat, and Moser runs to the kitchen, and Tarrickson tells her, "You're doing a lot more good with your money and your wealth than me and all the others on the docks who are just raking in coin. But what are we doing it for?" He's like, we're not we're not putting it, we're not necessarily creating or trying something as ambitious and as good as this. What you're doing is a good thing, and Tarek
Mm.
is another man who just sees an equal in capability and intellect, and and a superior in ambition. He's obviously very comfortable because he's incredibly rich, but equally with that comes a kind of easygoingness, which there are many very rich people I've come across who, and I suppose you could say the billionaires,
Mhm.
life is kind of easy, isn't it? So like you've got nothing to prove. I'm richer than you. I haven't got to be a dick about it. I mean, obviously there are very many rich people that are, the bankers burning £50 notes in front of homeless people for a laugh, but there are many people for whom it's just like, I'm secure in my position in life, and so what you're doing is incredible and I applaud you for it. And so it's just a more savvy human being. I mean, they happen to be blokes, and like you say, that hopefully that is refreshing. But to just enjoy someone's, to take pleasure and be proud of your partner's achievements. I mean, I've got, maybe I'm drawing from real life, right? My wife's got postgraduate certificates, and she's got this great job helping people with learning disabilities in local university and things, and she's a really powerful advocate for our kids and for the way autism and ADHD is represented and gets supported in these people doing their degrees, these undergraduates, all that kind of stuff. I just look at my own wife and I just think, what you do, and when she talks about her work, the passion and the knowledge and things, I just love it. I'm blown away, and so maybe it's easy for me to just transplant Auda, so Auda and Taya could be me and Rian possibly, but I just found it easy for a man to admire a woman for achievements. Obviously, the context is much more patriarchal in Saroon, which is the name of the world, which the books take place in. It's much more patriarchal, and I do lean into that, of course, a woman in a man's world thing. But of course, that creates a great bond between them. I mean, the fact that she's accepted for who she is makes her love him all the more, and the fact, the important thing, that his kid accepts her and calls her Ma, it just creates that bond. She never wants to let that go, and she feels empowered and supported and loved by them, which of course makes it all the more painful. You create all that love just because it's going to make it hurt that much more when you tear it all apart. Sorry.
I have to say, the world is really grim. When I started reading 5 chapters in, I'm like, what's going to happen next? What worse could happen? And it gets worse and worse and worse. And I'm like, oh my God, when is this going to stop? Like, I was thinking First Law World was grim, like, but this is like the grimmest ever, I think. But I'm not saying this in a negative way, but I'm saying that it's really was really immersive, each and every chapter.
I mean, just I think it's a topic that comes up. I do, or for the last couple of years, I've done a panel talk. I think it's TBR Con, the kind of the virtual conference that goes on every year, and I end up on the Grimdark panel, with a bunch of Grimdark authors, and all of them are very quick to say, well, Grimdark was kind of the reality for people living back then, like a nasty cut on a thorn, and if it got infected or went septic, you'd probably die. Just getting cut. There's no antibiotics. There's no. I can get away with it a bit in my world because the powers of the plants, allow you to take a few shortcuts through that. But generally speaking, like when you and the kids are on a barge, they've got no food and maybe a couple of copper coins, and I think they get stolen. I think a couple of guys steal it off a boy when she's looking to buy a pot of soup or something. It becomes very quickly about just stopping hunger and nothing else. You can't think about anything else. It's like, what can I give you for just a pot of that thin gruel, just a bowl for these kids? I'm not giving you anything. And I think there's a bit where they go into a settlement and she goes into a tavern, and I think the one guy says, well, if you want to get on your knees out the back, you can earn a few coppers, kind of thing. And so she just sees an empty plate that a mercenary had discarded, and she just steals a chicken bone and a bit of bread off the plate, and she's eking it out. It's that desperate, which just feels like real life back then. But it happened. It's grim, but I don't think it's. I've taken the reality of the Middle Ages, if you like, and then just made it worse. I think I've probably made it not. It's not quite as bad in some ways, but that's what a lot of grimdark authors will tell you. I think they just simply respect the grittiness and the sheer horror of surviving, in that time period.
And in times of war, I think it's always children the victims. Like, I mean, who suffer the most. So
Yeah,
close
well, they
to
get put. Yeah, the
reality for
kids.
sure.
Yeah, the kids get put into a workhouse, don't they? And then I think in the
Yeah.
letters she sends
Mm,
Layden back, I think, and they go back, and of course they're all covered in lice and they've been worked to the bone and stuff like that, and
mm,
getting into fights. They're just in a Victorian workhouse. As orphans, you just put
mm,
them to work, and they're making rope. I think they're making rope. I
mm,
remember researching that bit on what kind of things would be terrible manual labor. Tanneries
mm,
is almost a cliche, working in a tannery, because they're so famously kind of appalling because of the urine and all that kind of stuff that they use on the
mm,
leathers. So I wanted something that was a bit different to that, because it feels like maybe I'm wrong, but it feels like the go-to awful place to be found is a tannery in fantasy
mm.
novels. So I thought, I'm not doing a tannery, it's been done. So yeah.
Yeah.
And something else that I thought really struck me is the tension, the tension that builds and builds and builds. How do you build tension?
It wasn't conscious. I think going back to a point I made very early at the start was, I almost got it. I feel like I've got it for free, insofar as something dreadful has happened and this person is on the edge of life and death. Oh, we're back to the very start when the outlook's good and we've got plenty of people and soldiers with us. It's all going to be fine. And you think, well, it can't be. So each chapter that goes by, you're then, like I say, I'm racking up the tension, because before you get to the point with Moser being murdered, you come across the orphans and all that, and she's finding her way back. She's trying to evade the law and things. You just know something dreadful has happened here. And then as you go through the circle, it was definitely an intention that as she was going in, the optimism about the circle just being a bit of a rough place, but we got plenty of crew and we got a Druida, we're going to be okay. I wanted to ramp up the sense of, oh God, we got a problem here. Oh, actually, no, we've got a real problem here. But it's taking time. If she had realized that there was a mountainous problem, that Samakeeza was actually a complete blocker, if you like, to the journey early on, then the book wouldn't have existed. I needed it to be that she didn't feel the danger. Her ambition drove her on, pushed her over her doubts, and her crew's doubts. And then, of course, you get to the one settlement where Othbutter's brother, is it Krogan Othbutter? Krogan Othbutter, I think, gets killed. And this is the
Mm,
brother of the chief of the citadel, and
mm,
it's like, okay, they really don't care, do they? It's not just a bunch of bandits who are terrorizing a few theats. It's actually a proper warlord who is actually aligning the theats. And so she gets, if you like, almost too far in before realizing, actually, I'm out of my depth. This isn't anything like we could have anticipated. My chances of success are not high. But I put it at that point because she's so far in that she thinks, if I can just get to the Orcs Theat, we might be all right. She's basically overriding her common sense. So she sends, just before the dreadful scene, the pivotal scene, she sends Auda and Moser away with a bunch of the caravan and says, look, we just need to go as soldiers here. So she senses the danger. She thinks, okay, I'm going to react to this. I'm going to send them back, but I'm not going to give up. She can't give up. So she has that little bit, what she thinks is a little bit of common sense, but she's gone too far now. She's gone too far into the circle. The chieftain's brother's dead. There's almost no going back for her. She can't give up her ambition. And that's obviously the price she pays for the ambition. Is she just pushes it too far. She just believes, I'll be all right. I'll be all right. We're getting through. I'll be all right. And then of course Samakeeza is indeed too clever. He rounds up Auda and Moser and thinks she goes into the one theat and she's ambushed and it's over in seconds. She tries to take him out, but he's incredibly fast and strong and puts it down really quickly because she just had no idea what she was up against. And then of course he does what he does, and then that then feeds back into, which maybe is another thing that helps with the tension. There's a point where she's rescued in that place where she's with the kids by Cherry and Layden. I think they come in disguised, and because they've been looking for a Thornton, sent people all over the place looking for her, since she went missing in the circle, and they find her. And she, just rereading it the other day, she just begs them, go back Off-Butter, go back to the keeps that I've got on the edge of the circle, and just tell him to get out, just run for your lives, kind of thing. Like Samakeeza is too powerful. He's going to take the citadel. Off-Butter doesn't stand a chance. She's defeated. She's utterly defeated. Like he's broken her completely. Because she just doesn't believe there's a way back. So she says, you just need to get out of here. Don't worry about me. I'm heading off over this way. I don't want to see anyone ever again. They obviously can't accept that. She gets caught, of course, and that's how she gets dragged back to the heart of it all. But yet it's that she, her saying that stuff, accentuates the fact that she hasn't got any fight in her anymore. I think that she's led in that neck brace into Off-Butter's court, and she's expecting to be hanged, and she's just like, can you just hang me? Can you just kill me? I just want to die. I got nothing to live for. I just want to die. She just doesn't want to, and so she's been utterly broken. She's completely snapped in half. And then this get your old crew back together, mercenary crew, let's go back in and take him out. She's thinking, well, okay, if I can die with a sword in my hand, maybe that is better than being hung. So she just kind of thinks, screw you, like, if you're not going to kill me, I'm going to go back after him, and that's where I lean into the legends of the Yildismerd and the War Crow and stuff, which is a thing that I wanted to build her legend that way, that, people accumulate a lot of names as they go. So she's the second lady of Khazgal because of what happened over in Khazgal Landing. She was beloved of the king, who ended up marrying another woman, but he fell in love with her. I liked that idea that there's this backstory she never talks about, but she was actually, famous in song over there, for being this beautiful sort of soldier or whatever, so it was like another life. But then she accumulates through her actions here, she accumulates the names like Black Eye because she's got the Oscaro eye, and that's something I talk about, how the eye lets her see different things. She's been given a completely alien eye, and I think in Brother Red, one of the characters has a necklace which is a crow's. I'm trying to remember if I changed it or not, but I remember at the time, certainly in one of the drafts, it was a crow's skull with a black eye in one of the sockets that one of the characters in Brother Red wears, and it's the necklace for the Reds or whatever, and that's a nod back for the super observant to her black eye, that she had there. Rambling a bit then, sorry.
No, great.
Yeah.
Did you have a question, Angie? Or?
No, just to add to this, I think the building up of tension and also frustration by end of part 1, I was so frustrated. I wanted my vengeance. This part 2 better be about vengeance. That's what I finished it in just one day. Because I'm a slow reader, but I just finished this book in like 2 or 3 days, and that's a record for me. So I was like, you give me my vengeance, otherwise I'm going to throw this book.
And of course she gets to pick away, doesn't she? Because she goes back to the one seat where Krogan was killed, and she kills the guy that killed Krogan, and I think Samakeeza is there. She thinks she's just going to go in and take the settlement out, like she did the first outpost. And it's like, oh, Samakeeza's here. Okay, well, we can finish this now. And she doesn't quite get the chance. But by then, of course, when she sees him, she walks up to the gate and she's like, come on, I'm just an old woman. Come on, come and get it, kind of thing. And she's like, oh, I'm going to have you. You're not taking me down. You're in my world now, and so gets the fire back, in the fight. And then, but of course, then she's betrayed by Naz. And so all that seems to be going well with this really tight crew, she gets betrayed. And then I think, I'll come on to Lauren's question in a minute. And then, it all builds up to that finale where you like a bit like those two samurai, you know that there's got to be a face-off between her and Samakeeza. And so the crew that she has left with her, and all of Samakeeza's army that's chased after her right to the edge of the Almet forest. I needed to whittle all them away until it was just her and Reuben. her Ruben and I think it's Ruben, isn't it? The guy that's with her at the very end who gives her the extra fight brew.
Yeah.
And it's just her and Samakiza, and that, but what he doesn't know, of course, is what the eye can see, that black eye, and her on, a supercharged fight brew from the Oscaro. He kind of didn't stand a chance, but then she goes over him. You will die far from your homelands. Your blood isn't going in the earth. You're a betrayer. She gets that out of her in a way which, the fact that Samakiza dies where he does, he's not dying in his homeland. He's not going in the soil with his ancestors and all that kind of stuff, which I initiated in Snakewood with Gant, because he comes from around there as well. Is meant to be a terrible punishment, whereas I'm gonna go home, I'm gonna see Moser again, I'm gonna be fine, because she thinks she's about to die with a big wall of buffalo coming in. That was a very satisfying scene to write, for sure.
Yeah.
Really satisfying, just his confidence and cockiness, and then up against, but she, he doesn't know that she's now supercharged. She before, she didn't have the eye, she didn't have all that capability, and now she does, and so it's a different battle. So it was lovely, but of course, she don't quite get everything she wants out of the novel equally, as when you follow the letters. But there's some great questions there. I'm gonna TC, when I read about what happened to Moser, to put it down for the day, total wreck. How was it for you to write that scene? It broke my heart to write that scene, and more so because I was putting myself through, like, you're trying to feel what she's feeling. You're trying to think, like how am I reacting to this? If that was one of my, it's horrible, isn't it? Okay, let's kneel one of my children down before me now, and someone say, because of you, I'm going to slit this child's throat. And to watch them bleed out, looking at you, staring at you, it instantly makes me tear up. And I don't know, so what words do I choose? And I think the one word I chose for Auda was, did I choose the word lowing? I was thinking of that awful guttural sound that cows make when they're kind of, screaming is not the word, obviously, but lowing. There's this awful, terrible cry coming from an animal, and I thought I need to get it back to the animal, to the gut, this real unhinged, no words, no nothing, just raw, helpless agony, and I just, lowing just came across because an animal dying, it has that helpless feel to it. You instantly feel pity for an animal. So all these kind of thinking about the animal opens up that thing. What do we associate? So that's right. So all the associations with the words that I chose were why I chose those words, to best get across that helpless, screaming, insensate agony, and then to write it. Even as I was writing it, I thought, I can't do this. I need to. He needs to somehow live. And then I had to just go through with it, and that was horrible. I mean, again, it's that classic thing that you kill a child in anything. It's got to mean something, and in this book, of course, it's the reason the Post exists. It actually changed the world. So it wasn't a trivial, it was important that a death of a child to be depicted so graphically couldn't be trivial or just for the grimdark. It actually changed the future of the world, because as a result of what happens with the book, and that what happens to her as a result of that death, and her being released afterwards. And so and I read it back just the other day, and I'm kind of gritting my teeth and incredibly proud that as weird as that is to go back and think, I'm still proud of how I executed the feelings that she was undergoing, and looking at Auda and the helplessness. I still feel like I did that to the best of my ability. But it's horrible. It's a horrible thing to write. Lorne's question, what inspired the idea of building a road as the theme of the book? So Once Upon a Time in America, no, Once Upon a Time in the West. Is it the Charles Bronson, isn't it, and Henry Fonda, and the bad guy in that is an entrepreneur that is trying to build a railroad coast to coast across the West, basically, to bring civilization, to connect us to San Francisco and New York, presumably, I'm not sure, but to drive a road across it. And so that vision for I can't remember the villain's name in that, who Henry Fonda's a hired killer for, but he would stop at nothing. He'll kill anyone and anything to fulfill his vision. And so that was obviously a clear reference point when I was thinking about, because the bloodied shirt, Moses' bloodied shirt, becomes a relic of the post. So in Snakewood, I introduced the bloodied shirt without really knowing what its significance was. And so when I work back to think I want to tell the story of the bloodied shirt and how it became a relic, you get the Winter Road. But what would cause someone to kill a child and for that to be important? And you're almost working backwards to possible sequences of events that could make such a shirt be this almost holy relic. And what would the sacrifice be? And I thought, well, why would so then you're working backwards, why would Teus make that sacrifice? Or what was she trying to do that cost so much? And I thought, well, she's trying to do something noble. So it has to be a good thing she's trying to do, I think, and so this is me working it through. And I wanted it in the citadels. I wanted it, around the circle. And I thought, okay, yeah, drive a road across the wilderness. Just instantly, the Once Upon a Time in America, in the West, comes back. Of course, driving a railroad. It's a noble ambition that comes at a great cost and would meet great resistance. It just felt like a great hook to hang a journey off. And of course, a road it's a classic journey, right? Like any fantasy novel, you're trying to get from there to there. Whether it's Shire to Mount Doom, whether it's West Circle to East Circle. And I liked as well, none of these books are particularly epic in terms of their characters and Frodo. They're not Aragorn, they're not kings. It's literally about 50 or 80 or 100 miles of road. It's not much that she's fighting for. But I thought, you can tell I believe you can and should tell very powerful stories. There are very powerful stories to be told about ambitions that aren't saving Gondor and defeating, Sauron and stuff like that. And that's even somewhat mundane ambitions of just building a road across a wilderness can be packed full of all the heartaches and traumas. Because you sort of think, I know this sounds daft, but if EastEnders and Coronation Street, and soap operas can create great human drama out of shopkeepers and people who work in bars and cleaners, and surely you can create great drama out of anything. And obviously you wouldn't necessarily do that in fantasy, though I do think what you might call a kitchen sink fantasy, where it's a fantasy set just in a village and they never leave the village. You've still got people who love and hate and who are jealous and who are petty and who are noble and courageous and all the rest of it. They're all there. It's just so to me, it kind of made sense. So that's that one.
And TC asked, do you listen to music when you write, or do you write in silence?
I used to write in silence. I used to think I needed silence. I need silence. It has to be silence. Otherwise I can't concentrate. But lately, especially with the new novel I'm working on now, I kind of don't mind a bit of music on, but it's got to be ambient. It can't be music with lyrics and things where I find myself singing along because it disrupts me. So I listen to a lot of fairly ambient electronica, sort of some just a sound, just generally weird sounds. But I could do without it. Some days I just feel like having a bit of sound in the room because it's almost too quiet. And this is where I write in here. And then other days I just like, I do want the silence. I do. It might be a reflection of because at the moment what I'm writing with the new book is stuff that I had started just after I wrote Snakewood before I got a book deal. So I'm kind of going back over old ground. So it might be that it's just almost autopilot, and so I can have music on. But I find when I need to focus in and concentrate on a particular section, a particular sequence, or a piece of dialogue or whatever, I'll turn it off. So that might be the reason. It depends how. Fight scenes are easy, for example, because you're really just relaying a series of events. But when it comes to scenes yeah, any of the like the conversation at the start with off butter, but any of the scenes, or particularly, I mean, for me, the big conversation in the novel is when she catches up with Auda again, at that house that he's staying at, you
Mm.
know, and they sit down outside after, and you know, she like, I want you to come home, and he's like, I'm not coming home, you know. And when it comes to a scene like that where everything is on the line, it's a pivotal moment in the book. I probably do need silence, definitely. Yeah.
So, what made you decide to finish the book with letters? And you mentioned that a little bit earlier about.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a book called oh, Ian McEwan, On Chesil Beach. Literary fiction. Again, one to look out for. I do recommend Ian McEwan. Atonement. I think you love Atonement. So On Chesil Beach. So Ian McEwan, many of his novels, he has a conceit where in loads of different plots, the lives of people hinge on a single point in time. There's a book, The Child in Time, and it hinges on a child being stolen, snatched, literally kidnapped in a supermarket. I think there's a moment in, is it Enduring Love or Amsterdam, I can't remember, where a child gets carried away on a hot air balloon and doesn't let go of the guide rope, and you know, and there's this, and then that changes everything. And then on Chesil Beach, it's a plot spoiler to say what the point is that this young couple's life hinges upon.
Mm.
And so it was going along, and then the pivotal moment occurs, and then the novel completely changed, and it accelerated. You see where I'm going with this? It accelerated through their lives over the last quarter of the book, third of the book, in a really, really brilliant. It's a brilliant way. Ian McEwan is an incredible writer, but I wasn't expecting it. You know, it's as though their life changed after this moment, and then he just decides to take you on how their lives panned out as a result of this moment, and directly as a result of this moment. And I'd never seen anything like it before. And so, with The Winter Road, there's two ways of looking at it. Possibly the publisher, my editor Jenny, I don't know, was looking at it as, you know, Taya Amundsen gets into the circle, ends up against Samakeeza, kills Samakeeza, job's good. But for me, the book was not so much about that sequence of events and defeating that warlord. It was about the origin of the post, and the origin of the post was, you know, an awful lot more than that. You know, it didn't just start when she killed Samakeeza, because she still hadn't built the road. You know, there was still, you know, there was an awful lot to do, and I wanted to tell that story. And equally, I wanted to know how her life went and how things went from there. But the moment I began to think about it, I thought this is actually going to be incredibly boring, because because it's just going to be, she traveled here and made these contracts, and then she traveled there and sold, you bought this silk here and sold this silk there, and you know, etc. Ad infinitum. It's just, there's just there's nothing there.
Mm.
But equally, the thread with Auda, you know, and was will they or won't they find each other again? Will they or won't they love each other? You know, will he go back to her? And equally, I got the kids in the background as well, and I thought, I want to know what happens to these kids. But I'd read On Chesil Beach, and I thought, well, there's a way to do it. There's a way to get to the origin of the post from the death of Samakeeza. Is, why don't I just write a series of letters that accelerates through the rest of her natural life? How does her life play out? She kills this bad guy. She gets the road, but life doesn't end there. No one's life ends at a significant point like that. You know, will she or won't she get Auda? During the letters, you find out that she doesn't. But the letters gave me a chance to show you that moving apart, you know, never quite finding time for each other, just missing each other, you know, one thing after another, you know, old friends you never keep in touch with and all that kind of stuff. But gradually they're just moving apart, and she begins to realize he's not coming back, and it's actually done. How do I react to this? How do I respond to this? And her response was, well, you know, I love you. Can I just be your friend? I don't want to be just your friend, but I care too much about you and everything we've been through. Can we just sort of be friends? But equally, the characters that had helped her, Thornton, the kids, how Auda had changed, because of course Auda got broken when he was imprisoned by Samakeser, and he became kind of a nervous wreck, and took a long time to piece himself back together psychologically. There's PTSD in there effectively, and her burgeoning empire, all those things, and how she felt about all that, how almost it was a moment in the letters that you passed by. Was, I think, the one letter, there was only one letter that dealt with the finishing of the road. She said, we sent a messenger out and it took 2 weeks to get across the road. It's done. We have done this. But then Auda then says at one point, as I'm thinking about the ramifications of everything she did going across the circle, I think Auda at one point says, we went for a walk with capital W, into the forest and met the Oscaro, and the Oscaro have come out of their shells a bit, and they're now helping people and sharing their plant. And he said, this may be your biggest achievement.
Mhm.
And so it was only through thinking those things, and it's like the echo of the decisions you make. Like I make a decision 15, 20 years ago to write a book, and now I have this great privilege. Well, this is a privilege. It should never be anything other than a privilege to any author who gets this opportunity. You what, and then people like yourselves read the book. I've had some incredibly moving emails. I've had one particularly moving email. I won't mention it. It's a personal thing, but very moving email from one of my subscribers about a friendship that he has, and my books one of the things that helped them and stuff like that. And I think, oh my God, like I can't believe that me bashing away on a keyboard a few years later could make someone not put a book down for 3 days or whatever, or entertain someone. Like, this is a super trivial comparison to Taylor Amundsen, obviously, and leaving aside this is real and that's fiction. But it's just what you do if you do something for others, if you create something, like she created a road, if you have that ambition to change the world in some way, to tell your story, whatever it is, you can't foresee the consequences. And as trivial as mine are in relation to a few people loving something I wrote, the consequences of her actions are obviously massive, in the same way they would be in this world for politicians and stuff. The decisions you make, the way you behave and act, can be, sports people these days, basketball players, football players, become huge inspirations to generations of children. I'm a Liverpool fan. There's a player, Mo Salah. When I saw an interview of him, went back to a school in Egypt, and the kids just lit up. I want to do well at school. You inspire me, and this, that, and the other. And you see it in real life in all different contexts, I guess. And so, in thinking through the letters, the ambition and the world she's creating and changing, and how, I think it's Brekul, one of the boys, he obviously becomes a red. I think he becomes the first red, and how he's empowered to say, well, I think we ought to give everyone red uniforms. We ought to do this. We ought to do that. We stand for something. We're not just like any other merchant traders. We've got a brand. Oh my God, dare I say it? We're distinctive. We are the good company. We're trustworthy. We're merchants with a difference. It's that people can believe in us. We can stand for something, and then how that permeates out and out and out and out. And I explored a bit of that in Brother Red as well. In the epilogue, particularly, is a distillation of this very, very thing. So yeah. So if you get to Brother Red, you'll see what I mean.
Yeah.
Hello, Jonathan. Just seen someone's just joined.
And I wondered, did you ever consider getting into details of what Aldo went through when he was with the White Boys?
No, I didn't. I did need to, like, for me, I think it was, again, you're looking for, you could, but my whole approach is there a way I can convey the horror of something without telling you, show not tell, I guess. And so there's, when she sees him initially, he can't look at her, and then when he smiles and she looks at his smile, he then realizes, oh, he's got loads of teeth missing. So excuse me, I'm burping as well. So he puts
Mhm.
his hand over his mouth when he's talking to her, and he does it in the house as well. And it's also in the house. His there's a moment where his legs going and he's tapping, and she can't stop his leg, and he's just twitching, and he's just he's like his PTSD. He's completely messed up, and then he tells her in trying to escape. He tried to kill himself. He tried to jump off a cliff. Basically, he jumped down a ravine. He thought, I'm just going to try and end it now. So all of those things hopefully tell you everything you need to know about the suffering, and then then that moment where that soldier comes down after him and presumably to kill him, and he says he kills this soldier because he thinks, no, I'm going to kill myself, you don't get to kill me, I get to kill me. And to be in that place mentally, so he then kills a soldier, and that freaks him out as well, and he kind of escapes. And there's that one line, I think she says, he says, I don't know how you can kill people. Like, it just messed me up. And she says, it's only a madman that would say different. Killing is hard. She just tries to reassure him. Taking a life is a very difficult thing. It's not trivial just because I used to do it. She's trying to get that across. And so I chose those things, whether it's the physical behaviors he had, plus again his unwillingness to engage with her, not making eye contact and this, that, and the other. There's a silence about him, and then just relaying that I tried to kill myself. I tried to end it. I didn't want to be here. Like I say, should give you all that. And I'm always looking for a better way, or a less predictable or less ordinary way, if you like, to get that kind of suffering across. He could have just sat there and said, oh yeah, they did this to me, that to me, they pulled teeth out, and gone into it all. I thought you can do that in a more effective way, and particularly as well in relaying all that. What she say to that, oh my god, that's terrible, and put
Yeah.
her arm around him. But I almost wanted her and you to guess at it. It's more interesting if she's taking cues from how he is, that he's really suffered, and she really feels for him, but all you've really got is what she can see, because of course she is first person. If I was third person, maybe different, but she can only see the suffering as it
Yeah.
manifests now, and she don't need to know anymore. So it's almost like you don't need to know anymore because she doesn't, if that makes
Mm.
sense.
Yeah, I think it was
Yeah.
worse that we didn't get details. It made it worse and more. It made it more moving that we didn't have details.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, and because it's like you never want to see the monster in a horror film. As soon as you see it, you're like, oh.
I don't think I could have taken any more.
Yeah.
I was already devastated.
But hopefully, with the end with the letters, I got that great opportunity.
Yeah.
The road gets built. They calling it Moses Road. There's all these things, which is the little triumphs that occur when the girls grow up that she rescued. I mean, a couple of the boys go off the rails, but the girls, one becomes a great stable hand, and I think two of them go back to their old feet and pull it back together. And there's all these. Their lives were transformed in a positive way. She was able to help them and help them to rebuild and give them love and all that kind of stuff. And for me, it is ultimately a kind of happy ending. A bittersweet ending was what I was going for.
Yeah.
Could never be truly happy, could it? No.
No. I think we knew. I don't think anybody really expected it to be too happy. So.
No.
Yeah.
No. But life, life takes chunks out of us all. At some point, we're all going to grieve, and we're all going to suffer. And some obviously far more than others. You just look on the news, and there are people undergoing tremendous suffering. But everyone has their heartaches and heartbreaks, and they affect them, in as meaningful a way to them in the context of their life as someone else in a different life. And you can't help but take the knocks, but you go on. You get up every day, and you shower, and you brush your teeth, and you get dressed, and you're just hurting. You're just hurting, and you just keep going. But there's such and that's the thing, isn't it? With life, that I love about writing is you got to get all that in. There's pain, but there's also the good stuff, and they just live side by side. You have fond memories, the nostalgia, the having a great laugh with someone. They're all the sweeter. It's like no peaks without valleys. It's all the sweeter because it's going to end, because you aren't going to make it. That just mortality is a thing, and all the rest of it. That it's all in there. And I love that getting to the end of Taya's arc. It's like she's getting old, and she's arthritis is arthritis. I think she don't call it that because you haven't obviously got that word, but she's got arthritis and it's crippling her. And then at the very end, someone else is writing her letters, someone else is writing Auda's letters. They're being written for them in a different hand and stuff like that. And there's an Easter egg in the very final letter as well, which is still coming. Yeah. So
Okay.
there's something there. So the next novel that I'm writing now, whenever that's out, have a close read of a couple of scenes in the Winter Road, and you go, oh. So yeah, just drop it in there. So you won't get it yet, but you'll hopefully go. Because I love doing that. I love that. I love all that stuff in other books. Yeah.
And James says, you made me cry a train monster.
Hello, James. Thank you for. I know I've been to a couple of conventions with James. James, I've got to know James quite well at Bristol Con and other places. Yeah, super lovely guy. He's writing a book at the moment, I think, as well.
Oh.
He keeps putting it off. I keep nagging him to write, but yeah, keep going, James. There is one book that made me cry on the tube going to work one day. Oh god! And of course, I can. My recall is awful. Is it the Stoner? Who's it by? I'm gonna have a quick look because I can never remember the name. Stoner. John Edward Williams. Yeah, John Williams. And basically, yeah, that's the one book that's made me cry on a train in front of people and just feel really embarrassed by that. Yeah, again, some literary fiction. It's just about a slightly bumbling and ordinary professor's life. But a bit like Ned Kelly, there are moments where the mundaneness of his life, there are moments in the life which are spectacular in relation to the mundaneness. There's one particular moment, and it was so amazing because the rest of his life is so dull that it blew my head off. It was absolutely incredible. So I thoroughly recommend Stoner.
So out of the 3 books, I have read only one, which is The Winter Road. So what would you recommend me to go for next, Brother Red or the first one?
So, it's a tough one. It's a tough one only so far as if you're not read any of them, I'd say you go in with Brother Red or The Winter Road, because I think they're easier introductions to the world and the world building and the way I write and all that kind of stuff. But given you've got through The Winter Road and you know what the paint the color is and Fight Blues and all those things, I think you could go either way. The Brother Red is chronologically the next one, as in it takes place about 100 years after The Winter Road, and then Snakewood's about 100 years after. There's a very minor, and it is a minor spoiler in the epilogue for Brother Red forward into Snakewood, but I don't think it would affect your enjoyment of Snakewood at all. I don't think it really affects the plot very much. So you could go in that order. Snakewood's much more unusual in the style, because it's like a collection of essays and interviews and diary entries of different people that piece together the story of this mercenary band and its demise. Kaelin's 20, and so but Kaelin, is a pivotal figure in the world. And then Brother Red in between is the story. So in the Snakewood, if you would come across these kind of James Bond types called Fieldsmen of the Post. So the Post have these agents, if you like, these superpowered agents who are like James Bond, masters of espionage and daring do, and they basically go in and sort out the Post's problems or do assassinations or whatever it is. And they're kind of these super like SAS field operatives. And Brother Red is the story of the very first one. And typically for a woman, she's been forgotten by the time of Snakewood. This is the story of the first one, and and the impact that she makes in a not dissimilar way to Taya. You know, it's a younger woman, but again, she's up against a far more powerful villain than Sam Akiza. And that book is looking at what does victory look like when you cannot possibly win, when you cannot defeat the enemy. You know, when it's literally a child versus Sauron or a god. You know, like this person cannot be killed. So what? How do you succeed? How do you get the conclusion that you want from that? You know, how do you play that out? And that's kind of that's her discovering she's up against this incredibly powerful being, and nevertheless, you know, sort of going for it anyway. You know, so yeah, no, so yeah, so you could go either way. Yeah, honestly.
And Lauren says, I just purchased Stoner earlier today. What a coincidence you mentioned it.
Oh, see, yeah, great minds, Lauren. Great minds. It's yeah, I would be interested. I know that Lauren, you pop up on a couple of YouTube threads that, you know, I keep an eye on. Obviously, if there's any mentions of my stuff on YouTube, I check it out. But yeah, I would love to know on a thread or elsewhere, Lauren, if what you make a stoner, because it's, you might read it and think, what on earth? Why is Adrian, a fantasy writer, reading this? You know, but I think hopefully the pivotal scene will get you as well. But you know, I can see, you know, Ange, why you're picking classics and stuff like that, because great literature is everywhere, right? Because great literature is about people. Like it's the great books are books where the characters you really, really care about, and they're all over the place. You know, so I actually don't read a lot of fantasy, if I'm honest, because I go with recommendations that I think, oh, that sounds great, and that could be in any genre, whether it's a thriller. I read a lot of lit fic. I read a lot of non-fiction actually, because of course real people's lives can be quite naturally quite intense, you know, probably more so than fiction. But yeah, Stoner, in the same way that you know, Ned Kelly, you know, affected my writing, so Stoner, you know, had a profound effect on me, you know, because I really go for the emotion. I really try to rinse the emotion out of people.
Yeah, Lauren is one of the first. He's whenever Lauren recommends something to me, I go. He was one of the people who recommended The Winter Road to me. So credit to Lauren for that, because
Yeah, definitely, brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah, I mentioned it, something I take it seriously.
Yeah.
So I'm glad he did.
Yeah, my books are quite Marmite. You know, if you go on, I don't go on Goodreads anymore really, but when I used to go on Goodreads, you know, you get quite strong feelings either way. I don't get this, the writing style. I hate the writing style. Where, you know, none of the people are like, I love the writing style. You know, but I think that when people connect with it, you know, I think for all that I would like to make oodles of money out of it all and all that, I think, you know, if you can really hit the heart of some people rather than mildly entertain a huge number of people, I'd always want the former. If I had to choose, I say I'd rather make less money and mean more to some people than to just, you know, just like a, you know, for all that the Da Vinci Code, you know, made a ton of money or whatever for Dan Brown, you know, I you know, and I'm sure I'd enjoy that money, but as a writer, I want to move people. You know, like I want to write stories that really move and, you know, really powerfully affect people rather than just be a bit of a roller coaster ride, or, you know, like a theme park ride through a plot. You know, it's all about an intense relationship with people. So Brother Red, if you went for Brother Red, for example, next, I think one of the people that reviewed it just said chapter 18, like what the hell, you know, and straight away I knew what they were on about, because chapter 18 is the bit of writing I'm most proud of, and it's a conversation between a daughter and her parents. That's all it is. It's just three people sat on a bench, and I am the most proud of that out of everything, because it just, yeah, I just, you know, and so when someone else picked up on that and was like, oh my god, what have you done, you know, like how intense was that, you know, I'm yeah, that makes me the happiest author ever. You know, to move someone that way. You know, so I'll always take that over something bland. I always try to go for the guts, go for the heart, go for the
Yeah.
tears. You know, yeah.
Yeah, I had a little bit of a hangover after this one. It's like, how do you transition to another book after that? It's still
Yeah.
what I think about after a week or so.
Yeah, Stoner was one of them. There are other books that have done. I think Atonement did that for me as well. Ian McEwan, Wolf Hall, almost
Mm.
obviously, you know, Hilary Mantel, Margaret Atwood's The Blind Assassin.
Mm.
I'm throwing out
Okay.
book recs now because that's possibly Blind Assassin, Wolf Hall, and Against the Day by Thomas Pynchon. All three of
Wow.
them were so powerful. I think they're probably the three best books I've ever read. They're all
Mhm.
incredible, but yeah, huge, like I say, huge hangovers after them. You come out of that, like, you know, shell shocked by the journey you went on. You know, just wonderful, wonderful books. Yeah, I love it. That's what I look for. You know, I'm looking for that connection. I'm looking for that. Yeah, that for a book to do that to me, I guess. Yeah.
Definitely. And Angie, did you have any closing thoughts?
I think I will try, if I'm rereading this again, I want to try the audiobook and try the
Yeah.
immersive reading. I'm a fan of immersive reading, so I
Mm.
want to try that. And yeah, in one word, if you just like Steve just now told, if you ask me about this book, to describe this book in one word, I think it is contemplative, because once you
Mm.
finish the book, you're still thinking about that book and still thinking about the characters, especially the characters, because they stay with you for a long time. I'm sure they're going to stay with me for a long time, especially Tear and um, the children also. I mean, they
Yeah. Yeah.
broke my heart.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Mission
yeah,
accomplished.
yes, I mean, really a tear jerker, and I'm really happy you know, took Steve's recommendation. I got recommended after one of Steve's video, and that's when I decided that, you know, I should read this book. I'm really grateful to Steve for that. So
So am I.
yeah.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
thank you for writing such an incredible
Yeah.
book, Adrian.
Yeah. Yeah, well, obviously the pleasure is all mine. I thoroughly enjoyed writing it. You know, it's the great pleasure in my life. You know, I have a day job and everything, but yeah, I'd give anything to be able to write, just,
Mm.
you know, spend my days writing. That's the
Yeah.
dream for probably every author you're connected with on Twitter as well. You know, they would love the freedom to be able to do it. You know, because I think I would just I'd churn them out. I would, if finding time in the day is
Mm.
really tough. You know, I'm carving out an hour in the mornings or lunch times, or I think
Mm.
Sundays is my big writing day. Sit down and just spend all day trying to bash some work out. Yeah, no, I love it. Yeah, I've taken a bit of a break from after Brother Red. I got a bit burnt out. You know, that there was a lot. I was
Mm.
doing a lot of stuff and a lot going on in my personal life at the time. Um, but after about a year off, I'm back on this new one now, and but I'm glad I did because I'm really enjoying it, and I haven't got a deadline. Like with Snakewood, I never had a deadline. It's the
Mm.
first time again since Snakewood I haven't had a deadline, and so I'm now you know, I'm just able to just enjoy noodling away at the prose and taking my time thinking about it, not worrying about the word count or getting a certain amount done a week or a month or whatever. You know, and
Mm.
it's just it's a lovely feeling, you know. So yeah, I hope that'll come through, you know, in the finished product next year, ish, yeah.
I know Steve, Books with Zara was going to make it, but she unfortunately had some problems with her internet. But
Yeah.
she is talking about doing scheduling something with you to talk Brother Red.
Yeah.
So maybe make that happen on her channel, and that'd be a lot of fun. So hopefully we can find that out.
Yeah, and hopefully you can give that a read. I know you've got a million books to read, and you know, and you know, lots of other authors and stuff to talk to. But yeah, if you could be part of that, that'd be great because it'd be lovely to see how you feel. You know, I've evolved, or the
Mm.
book's evolved, or the world has evolved. You know, with Drew and Margosta, and of course, it gives you all the Oscaro you could possibly want.
Yeah.
Mm.
Awesome. So, Adrian, if someone wants to connect with you, where's the best place to find you?
So I check Twitter just to see if there's anything going on like relating to people wanting to connect or whatever. So that's at Adrian L. Selby. I've got a website, adrianselby.com, and I think I can be reached directly off there or via the newsletter or whatever. Yeah, you can find out certainly all about my writing, and I need to put a couple of these podcasts and things up on there, because I have sections for each of the books, where people can find out more about the books or more about stuff like this, me talking about them. So you go to adrianselby.com for snippets and excerpts and a few ramblings on various other topics that interest me. But Twitter's probably the best place.
Awesome. And Angie, where can
Nice.
people find you and find your channel?
So, book related, obviously, my YouTube channel, which is Bookaholic Brown Name, and with the same name, I have a Bookstagram account, so you can DM me, any one of you, if you want to contact me for anything.
Awesome. Well, I'm so grateful you decided to read this with us and come and chat with us. It was great to finally connect with you.
Yep, I'm glad I did that as well. Looking forward to the other two books as well, and the
Yeah,
new ones to come in future.
Yes, it's a series. The next one, it's not a standalone. It's a big series. So
Wow,
God help
exciting.
me. God help me. Yeah.
what have you done?
Yeah.
And we'll let you know when we have the next one scheduled for Brother Red. So
Yeah. Lovely. Thank you both very much indeed. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you to everyone that's
Well,
come along and had a chat. I really appreciate you spending your time and finding out a bit more. But yeah, thank you both. It's been a huge pleasure.
yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I loved the great book. So we're very happy to talk about it.
yep.
But thanks everybody, and we'll see you next time.
Cheers.
Thanks, everybody.